Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in our session. I'm glad that that so many people came to watch the film. I hope you like it. And before we start asking question to our guest, Mr. Bienczyk would like to say a few words about the film itself and about the book on which the film is based.
Let's say it's the longest book I have ever written, but it's the shortest text I have ever written. Okay. Okay. You have to change. Oh, thank you very much for coming. I just would like to say that it's the first time I watched this movie with an audience. So this is a very big pleasure for me to see you watching this film. And for me, it is I choose to show you this film because you don't know my books. But when I arrived here, the first thing I saw was pastries in pastry shops. So I understood that you like pastries, as we do, and maybe more. So I think it fits to your taste. And Polish cakes are very, very good, Polish pastries. Really good. I warmly invite you to come to Poland just to eat some pastries. This book is completely outside the mainstream of my writing. I just wrote 2 books for children, if it is for children. I think it is not really for children, but it is not really for adults, so it is for nobody. But Mr. Nobody is a very good reader for me and a very good viewer. And I wrote this short story in a few hours. I was asked by a friend of mine who was preparing an exhibition on the happiness in his art gallery to write a short story. But about happiness. But speaking happiness, I must add that I was lucky too because Joanna Consejo, who is now a very famous book illustrator, was asked to make illustrations. So my contribution to this movie is quite small. And her contribution is immense. And there are things, the paradox which I would like to say that the voice was provided by the male voice of the main character was provided by one of the most famous Polish actors, and the music was composed by one of the best Polish piano jazz musicians. And this movie won several awards in Poland and outside of Poland. But the last sentence I would like to say that the paradox is that I wrote this short story maybe in 2-3 hours, but the staff of the film, the artists, took 3 years to prepare this movie because all frames were hand painted and very little computer technology was used. So it was for me just a very surprising experience to see my small work, one coffee, two coffee, text is ready, developed by a group of artists, and it was something of very special for me.
But even you said that you wrote this story just in a few hours, but it is a the story asks a very important question, the question of happiness and of the fact that why we are so scared to be happy, why we feel guilty when we are happy, and why we don't write about happiness, in Europe at least, rather than sorrow and tragedy. Could you say something about that?
First of all, I have to say that before coming here, my friends told me, please smile. Please, you go to India, please smile. Because in Poland we don't smile a lot. And mostly myself, I don't smile a lot. So please smile. And so I try to smile. By random, I saw today in a newspaper, in a Polish newspaper, World Happiness Ranking about countries which are the happiest and the less happiest. And in the first 30 countries, I didn't find Poland. The first place, Finland, Denmark, you can imagine. So it is not easy to write about happiness in a melancholy country. As I told you, it is this story remains outside the mainstream of my writing, but there are two themes which come back constantly in what I used to write, and I am still continuing to write. I mean melancholy and idle. And there are, I would say, two major topics in my writing. So it is very European, I would say. Melancholy and idle, melancholy and utopia go together. As a one couple, happy and unhappy at the same time. So when I came here, I understood quite quickly that if I stay here more time, I would become more happy that I am.
Apart of being a writer, you are also a specialist, the literature specialist and scholar. So I would like to ask you if it was easier or more difficult being a literature specialist for a person like you. Was it easier or more difficult to become also a writer? Because as we can say, you know everything about the literature. I'm not saying that the writers don't, but you are the professor. You know everything. So was it helpful or was it rather no?
Thank you for your question, but the answer will be very long. So just please forgive me. There are two or three things which are important for me. You know, in my writing, I blend different genres: poetry, essay, plot, narrative. So it is a kind of mixed salad. There is no one predominant genre, but different genre in one book. And I ask myself, as you did now, how was it possible and why I mixed narrative, scholar analysis and interpretation, poetry, a little bit of humor, irony in one book. And my answer, and I have an answer. It is my personal answer. Everybody, each writer constructs his own myth of his origin. So my myth is the following. I was born 11 years after the World War II. And my parents, for my parents, the war was particularly cruel. And they were obliged to escape if they wanted to preserve their lives. And by osmosis, I felt it in home. They weren't speaking about it, but I felt that something was wrong in their life before. And if I should give 2 or 3 words which are maybe the most important for my psyche, for my imagination, it would be desertion, betrayal, and evasion. As my parents did during the war, they escaped several times, and they preserved their life. So I think that the most important thing when I was young was this reflex, this instinct of desertion, not to be in the place where I am. So it is not intellectual explication. And the second explanation is I grew up in a neighborhood which was rather poor, inhabited by working class, and so it was a little bit, as we say now, hooligan neighborhood. But at the same time, I started to read myself a lot and to write myself. I wrote my first novel when I was 8 years old. And it was a good novel because the first sentence was, "The sun is rising." Maybe the best beginning of whatever I was able to write. And on one hand, I was reading a lot, and on the other hand, I remained faithful to this, I would say, to this landscape. After when I became student and professor and started writing scholarly academic texts, I also betrayed the academy. I deserted the academy, and my texts are not academic because I don't know how to do it. I mix in one text the high style and the low style. And I can write in one book about, I don't know, Gustav Flaubert, and soccer or tennis, about Victor Hugo and wine or perfumes, in one text, in one book. So I would say I am a literary bastard, and I like to be this modest bastard.
I think you're too modest, and a part of being a scholar, a part of being a writer, and you are also a translator. And I would like to ask you if when you write something and you are a translator, so do you think sometimes while you are writing about somebody who will translate your books in the future, and you try to make the work more difficult or easier?
Yeah, it is a very good question, because when you translate, actually I translate from French. You can detect my French accent, sorry for this. So when you translate an author who has a very specific style, after you have a tendency to imitate, to make a pastiche of the text you had translated, and even you take the respiration of the author you are translating. For example, I translated Roland Barthes, which was famous French philosopher, essayist. And he has a very French way of putting, 2 points or 3 points, just signs, in his text. And when I started writing about, after translating him, I saw that I made the same, that I repeat his respiration, his breath, the same rhythm of sentence, of my sentences. It's the same when I translated Milan Kundera from French. He put very short sentences, and I observed that after, when I started writing my text, I put suddenly very short sentences for a while. And I translated also a Romanian French author, Émile Cioran, the best French language ever written in France. He was not Frenchman. And it was so raffinated, so, sublime, that after I started to try to be very sublime. So, you understand, Marcel Proust, the French famous writer, said, if you like an author, if you translate an author, if you like his style, you have to make a pastiche, and after you are free.
And do you think that writers are better translators?
Not necessarily. No, there is it is a profession to be translator. So I don't think so. I don't think so.
Some people say that to translate poetry, you have to be a poet. Is it just like this romantic approach, or is it something real in that?
I don't know. I didn't translate poems, in fact, and I am not a poet. But maybe for the poetry, yes, and for narrative, it is not necessary. And even it could be a danger, because a writer has his rhythm very elaborated. For example, when I write in Polish, I put the main word at the end of the phrase. And when I started translating Barthes or Cioran, I look at my text, and the main word was at the end of the phrase, of the sentences. So you have to be very careful with this, because if you are a writer, you are slave of your own style.
That's true. Well, I think we don't have much time for the session, but I'm sure that you appreciate the film. So, but of course, we would like to We would love to have more time to speak longer, but now we have time for questions from the audience.
Anyway, thank you for making me happy. There will be one question.
What advice would you like to give to the aspiring writers?
Come again, sorry?
What advice would you like to give to the aspiring writers?
To young writers, you mean? Well, not to try to do other job. Be patient. Nourish a big passion for coffee. And don't be worried if it doesn't work for a while. If you spend 3 hours without writing any sentence, any word, it is not serious. It is not important. Huh? You will write the next day, or you have to be patient. Yeah? And when you start writing a text, try to have some dreams about it, to sleep with your text. And when you go shopping, you go with your text in your head. You know, when I was playing tennis a lot, I used to play tennis before, and I was losing, but during the match I was writing my text. Some sentences, some words were coming, and I use it after. And you know, you are like a prisoner. So you can, if you write a book, it is as if you spend it 5 years in a prison. Because you know, time goes by, just one sentence per day. Why not? It happens to me to write one sentence per day. So it is like this. You are a prisoner for life.
We saw the movie. I'm having a question about the movie, if I have understood it correctly. It seems the movie, the woman was more happier than the man. Is it true?
You know, there are two things. First, I wrote this text years ago, before gender studies. Now probably I would maybe changing the table, you know. And the second thing, my text was a pastiche of Little Prince by Saint-Exupéry, a very famous French author and very famous book in Europe. I don't know. And in this Little Prince, in this book by Saint-Exupéry, the woman was, he was serious and ate a bit lost, and the woman was more free and more spiritual and so on. But it is like this. But you know, last thing. Once I was asked in an interview, what do you like? What is the best quality you like in a woman and in a man? So I asked, in woman, irony, and in men, auto-irony. So
So, when did you start writing and how did it influence your life?
You know, the last effect of writing is that I am here. And I started when I was 8. As I told you, I wrote my first novel, maybe the best, never published. It was about a friendship, as you can imagine, between a young boy, white young boy, and an Indian boy from North America, no? Blackfoots. So because before I read a lot of books telling the story of Wild West, Indian and white struggles and so on. So it was about the friendship. And now I think it was maybe a bad choice because my books are a little bit too soft. Too much good feelings. And maybe the literature needs more dramatic feelings. And what I learned when I started writing at that time, it was that I didn't want to be sarcastic. I don't like sarcasm. But I wanted to be ironic. And it is not the same, because when you are sarcastic, you mock people. And when you are ironic, you mock them a little bit, but you love them. It is a kind of angelic irony. So, coming back to your question, you know, I was writing all my life. 8 years, 12 years, I was imitating other writers. And maybe I started because one day I was 15. I was 15 years old. I found by random a letter wrote by a young girl during the Second World War in 1943. And it was an authentic letter, a true letter, writing by a young girl. And in this letter, she informed her friend that she's going to die, that she was going to die, and she was preparing for death, and she wanted to die. And I read this letter. It was like a shock. It shocked me why this young girl wanted to die. And I felt that that one day I would have to answer this letter. And 20 years after I answered this letter, and it was one of my first books. But writing is always there, you know. When I wake up, I put machine coffee, I switch on machine coffee and my computer, and I started to eat. But computer is waiting for me, as a dog. So sometimes I write, sometimes not, but I am always ready to write. So it changed. Sorry, I talk too much. It changed completely, and my family knows it very well. You know, Philip Roth, famous American writer, said, if you are a writer, excuse me, the vulgar, if you are a writer, your family is fucked. So the first sentence I hear home is, even if I'm sitting watching TV or listen to the radio, the first thing I think, don't stop to write. Talk to me. Stop to write. My wife said, stop to write. When I go with my friends, and I say nothing. They tell me stop to write just for a moment. Talk with us because the engine is working all the time. It's not very good for life, but it's good for traveling because I'm here.